What's up guys, welcome back to another niche focus video, and today I'm super excited after about 4 months. I'm finally ready to review one of my favorite pieces of camera gear tech, and it is the FeiyuTech AK4500. Now, if you haven't figured out already, this is a 3-axis gimbal. When FeiyuTech originally reached out to me back in July, sorry for the late review, the biggest thing that caught my eye is the fact that this thing can carry up to a 10-pound payload. If you've seen this gimbal before in the wild or someone else having it, you'll know that it doesn't look like this out of the box. It actually looks very much like the Crane Lab 3. This is how, if you buy just the AK4500 by itself, comes in the box. Again, has that kind of secondary briefcase mode type handle, which is really cool, has some extra settings I'll talk about in a few minutes. But what I wanted to test out the most is a extra accessory that you can get, which basically converts it to what you see here. Now, the main reason I wanted this ring is a couple reasons. One, it has feet, so you can set this down super easily. This does have a tripod, but when you are putting top heavy rigs like I have, this is way more stable. As well as you can attach a bunch of accessories like you've seen here. I usually put a monitor on top, but of course it's on that camera right now. Usually put a wireless transmitter, and I have a crazy battery setup since I run V-mount batteries from my 6K. What's really cool about it is the ring utilizes the brain of the gimbal. So if you look closely on the back here, this is actually the main handle. So the genius of this design is the fact that this is the main part of the gimbal. Before I get into how I have mine set up, I do want to touch upon a couple things that come in the box that I'm not utilizing just based on my setup. But that are really cool. One, of course, you have a lens support little system. That's nothing crazy. As I did mention, it does come with a tripod. So if you have the standard configuration, this is a nice wide base one. So it definitely is trustworthy to have it on there. But again, this is just a little bit more stable. And then what is nice is it does come with an extension. This is carbon fiber, just like the rest of this rig. So it's basically weighs nothing. This is awesome. So that way you can, reach up higher or lower, and adds just an extra nice grip. It has threaded bottom as well as top, obviously. And so you could even put the tripod on here and then put the main part of the gimbal here and have something really tall. And then of course in here you have the chargers and all that sort of stuff, but I don't really want to waste time on that. Half what I love about this thing is how modular it is this little guy. This looks like a mini version of the main gimbal remote here. This is a secondary remote, which again, normally this will go right here, and this essentially goes like this. So you can see here, this is this, and that handle is that. Makes sense? Now, even though I don't use this for the main setup, the reason that I did want to talk about this still is because of some things you can utilize whether you have it attached or not. There's definitely other gimbals out there who have a remote feature, maybe with your phone or with a physical separate remote like this, and that is cool. Part of the genius is how things are programmed. Is it intuitive? And what I love is that it's not hard to change modes between, if I am operating this, I want to be able to still make movements and to still do my thing as a camera operator. But then if I wanted someone to take over, once it's turned on, is ready to go, but you'll notice it's not doing anything. All I have to do is press and hold the trigger on the back, and now all of a sudden, it's like a magic wand. So it follows, and I don't have the settings dialed in, so I have it set to a very smooth, so it's not in the action mode, which kind of will make it a bit more snappy. You could do tilts, pan around. And what's cool is both of these you can actually program. So right now this is set to tilt. So maybe I'll do pan and tilt like that. I can also set it by pressing it. So you simply press in on the button here, and now it's set to roll. So now I could hold the trigger, go up to the right, and maybe I want to go down to the left and add a roll in there. And last of the accessories, just so you guys know, this does run off of 4 of those 18650 batteries. In terms of battery life, I would say this is okay. I've used gimbals that literally last all day. This one, maybe with a lighter load, I'm sure would. I certainly don't have any issues. I'd say probably still 4 to 6 hours worth of use on a single set of batteries before I have to swap them out. My guess is because I'm pretty much maxing out the near 10-pound load on this thing, and so it's working hard all the time. So that's probably why. But the battery is still very good. But if you are a all-day shooter type, I'd have at least one extra set just in case. All right, so now we've talked about all the accessories. Let's actually talk about my setup here. So again, I'm using the third-party ring, and then usually right here I have the Atomos Shinobi monitor, which is currently on my Pocket 4K right there. And then now I even have it thanks to Armando from Mondo Bytes. He sent me a bunch of Condor Blue stuff, including these little quick release things, which are a freaking lifesaver. So I've utilized them everywhere on this thing. Then I have the actual gimbal here. One thing I love about it is the fact that all the axes lock. So that way you can balance one at a time, and then when it's off like it is now, it's all stationary and not falling all over the place, or if you're transporting it. One very small con is the fact that it's definitely not made to be locked with the camera on it, because I have just usually set this in the passenger seat in the car, and if there's a lot of vibrations or anything like that, usually this one will come loose and we'll kind of do this. Not a big deal at all, nothing's ever broken. It would be cooler if these were a bit stronger to hold the camera, but I get that that's not what it was intended for. On the top, where I have things screwed in by 1/4-20s, it is cool because each one you get a hot shoe mount as well as a 5/8 thread and a 1/4-20 thread. So you have a ton of mounting options. And then because the Blackmagic is so crappy with internal batteries, I knew I needed a V-mount option. So what I did is have the little battery adapter here going to a V-mount plate to 2 of these clamps here. And again, using Condor Blue quick releases, I literally have this battery plate able to come off super easily if I need it somewhere else. But then just slide it right on there, lock it into position, and that is nice and firm. Grabbing a battery here. So this is actually my biggest V-mount battery, and this thing really makes the whole setup significantly heavier. I'd say this whole thing is probably about, I don't know, 15 pounds or so. The gimbal itself basically weighs nothing because again, this is all carbon fiber. But with this, a monitor slapped onto it, it definitely gets heavy, but I don't use any sort of easy rig. And I literally, for a friend, just shot a wedding all day, and then I've done commercials, short films, all that stuff for 8 to 12 hour days, and this thing is no problem. Another really cool feature on here is the fact that it does come with a top mount, kind of like the Ronin 2, so the big gimbal. It does come with a follow focus wheel, which is really nice. It's nice and smooth, pretty typical. The wheel here is very smooth, has a nice dampening to it. You can't adjust the dampening. Another thing you don't see on a lot of gimbals, which is really nice, is there's actually a top loading quick release for the actual camera. So on the back here, I can actually just open this lever and the whole camera comes off, unplug the quick release battery. Now I'm handheld, could go onto a tripod or anything like that. So you can see here the main base plate actually stays put, and that way you're not messing with any of your balance points. So this is already set for how far away, forward and back, all that stuff. You don't have to mess with unplugging the whole wireless follow focus system. And so now when I want to plug this back on here, attach that back in, make sure it's nice and tight. Just put back the gear on the follow focus system, plug in my battery. If I wanted to, plug this top part in. All right, and then in terms of use, I don't want to make this a hour-long step-by-side tutorial. I just want to touch upon a few key points that I really think make this thing worth it and an excellent gimbal. One of the facts, again, is that on the back here, you have quick access to all of your settings just by your thumb. So even without setting it down, you can easily go in to change between all the pan, tilt, and roll. This setting, which follows you. I really like the shooting modes that are preset. So right now this is set to smooth. So, you notice there's a little bit of a delay when I move it around, but it keeps it nice, cinematic, and smooth. But I can quickly change it to action mode, which still keeps it pretty smooth, but gives some extra torque in the motors, and it really will roll and tilt and pan that much faster. And you'll notice as I'm moving this around, this is the ultimate selling point of this gimbal compared to anything else I've tried for this camera. I've seen those other gimbals where people are like, look, it holds the Blackmagic Pocket 4K or 6K. And sure, it technically holds it, and they'll do all these shots where they're like staying perfectly level, and they'll be like, look, it balances. And they usually have like a bunch of counterweights everywhere, and the second that they like tilt a little bit or roll a little bit, the motors break, or give out I should say, and it just really is not great. This is basically the heaviest setup with this. This lens is a lot heavier than my other one. Obviously I have the camera with the tilt-a cage on it, and the motors do give out sometimes. For example, I can tilt right there. So almost going for a top-down shot, and then for something like a roll, whoop, there it goes. So again, almost a 90-degree roll on the side. With a little bit lighter lens, I've gone completely 90 degrees, and I've gone fully top down or fully this way, and it works just fine. But with this little bit heavier lens, I do have a little bit. And the nice thing is when the motors do give out, like I'll make it give out here, so like that, the motor does give out, and it doesn't do that crazy thing where it nearly breaks itself, where you hear go like duh, 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 duh. And basically you can either try double clicking to reset, and if that still doesn't do it, you kind of just push your finger to help it back to center, and then it resets itself. So you don't have to go through and like reset the whole gimbal, because there have been plenty of times where I've been really, going at it, getting the shot, and the motor will give out, but a second later I need to be aimed back at whatever the subject is, and so I just help it out, get it back to center, and it's good to go again. All right, so I'm here at Ohio HD with the good old gimbal here, and we're gonna go see if this thing can truly hold a red 8K helium. Of a very good reason, although I can't think of a good reason as to why most people are. Just saying, the motors aren't freaking out. Probably have to change the power output a little bit. Okay, so it breaks a little bit on the roll, but it corrects itself so beautifully. Payload setting. Yeah? Yeah. What the fuck? This is so like... It's so... What? Get out of here. Oh my... I could run with this. Dude, dialed in? I think that actually would be pretty decent. And we don't have a battery pack or anything, but you just run that to the meat mount.
I can run with this all day.
Yeah? Well, the red officially, I mean, this is pretty balanced. It breaks a little bit on when you go for a super roll. It's still pretty smooth, it holds it okay, but it doesn't hold it in the exact place, so you're probably not doing the 360 rotations with this guy. But for, basic gimbal work, this is 100% usable. Now this does have a iOS app to where you perform all over-the-air updates, which is super nice. So you don't have to plug this thing into the computer in any sort of crazy way and go through a terrible installer like some of those other gimbals. Simply go on the FeiyuTech app and look for any updates. And updates come out regularly and they fix a couple of the bugs I've noticed. So like I've mentioned before, in terms of use cases, I've used this on commercials, I've worked on short films and feature films, as well as a wedding I recently did for a friend. The other day I was literally sprinting through the woods, tripping on things, and this thing completely held up and gave me some really smooth shots. I've hung it outside of a car while filming other cars pass by at high speeds. It works. Close-up product shots or following Canoopsy on a skateboard in Toronto. For the past 4 months, this thing has been the best piece of camera gear that I've gotten in a long time, excluding my actual cameras. Again, I did mention that FeiyuTech sent me this back in July, but they absolutely did not pay me or tell me specifically what to mention or what not to mention. The fact that this gimbal comes at around 800 bucks and then about like 150 or so on the extra ring, I would absolutely pay that. Honestly, I think they could have charged nearly like double for this. I'm happy they didn't because it remains a great option in the marketplace, sitting alongside those other two models like I mentioned before. And if you're like me and literally have never heard of this company prior to them reaching out to me, again, I hope this video can give you a peace of mind into putting this at the top of your contender list, because if you have a Blackmagic pocket cinema camera, one of the 4Ks or 6Ks, I can attest this thing works wonderfully with it. I know I sprinkled a couple cons in there. The last one that I wanted to add, it's not a huge con, more of something to be aware of, is the fact that all the points in which everything connects over time, if you leave the setup like this, will come loose a little bit. So before I shoot, I always just do a quick check where I'm putting these on. These you'll check most of the time, just because if anytime you need to replace the batteries, you have to unscrew this. This side won't get too loose usually, but I'll usually just give it a quick tighten. It takes 0.2 seconds. The important one though is this. This is where the actual gimbal mounts. Like I mentioned before, this comes all the way loose. This is the actual gimbal top part. So you don't want this to come fully loose while you're shooting it. Before you shoot, once you add the camera on there, or even before, just kind of twist that, make sure it's fully tightened in the lock position. So that's it guys, that's my review of the FeiyuTech AK4500 gimbal. If you have any questions on it, definitely leave a comment down below and I'll do my best to answer all of them. Hopefully you got a good idea into what this gimbal looks like, what its use cases are. If you're not already, definitely hit that subscribe button. We're just about to cross over 10,000 subscribers, so thanks to all who have come aboard. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one.